Hello everyone, and thank you for attending this presentation. My name is Guirado from Universitat Politécnica de Catalunya, and today I will present the paper titled Dataflow-Architecture Co-Design for 2.5D DNN Accelerators using wireless NetworkonPackage, which has been done in collaboration with the Georgia Institute of Technology. So, as an overview of the paper, we focus on the problem of mapping a deep neural network in a hardware platform, specifically a DNN accelerator, and specifically we focus on the scale-out problem, that is, to increase the number of chiplets in the DNN accelerators, which allow to increase the computational power. And the problem with this scale-out is that if it's done via electrical interposers, which is one of the best ways right now, it is bandwidth limited, as we will see later. So our idea is to introduce wireless NetworkonPackage technology, that is wireless interconnects with nano antennas in the chiplets in order to bypass such limitations. By the end of the paper, we'll see how Vienna allows up to a 5.1 times speed up and up to a 38% in energy savings. So as we all know, DNNs are these amazing tools that allow us to perform tasks with superhuman accuracy, such as object detection or pose estimation. The thing is that they are becoming more complex and larger every day. And so in order to run them more efficiently, we need specific platforms, the so-called deep neural network accelerators. So specifically, a DNN accelerator is a dedicated hardware aimed at increasing the throughput and reducing the energy consumption when running a deep neural network. And it's done via parallelism and dedicated circuitry. The basic structure of a DNN accelerator is an off-chip memory, a global shared memory, then a bunch of processing elements or Ps, and all of these elements connected via a network on chip. In order to map the data from the memory to the Ps and back to the memory, specific data flows are required. These data flows, in the end, will define how the data is partitioned, how this is moved, and the data reuse, if it is available, between processing elements. So in order to increase the computing power of a DNN accelerator, there are two approaches. The first one is just to increase the number of Ps directly, which is called scale up. The second one, called scaled out, is increasing the number of chiplets, in which each chiplet inside has some processing elements. So this second approach is the focus of this paper. An example of a real DNN accelerator following this approach is the Simba down here. So this scale out is possible via an interposer, that is a 2.5D chiplet integration technique, which enables to doing so efficiently. So, as we already said, the data flows are the different strategies to map the data from the memory to the processing elements. So in this paper, we focus on three different data flows. The first one is the filter partitioning one, in which the different filters are being unicasted or independently sent to the different chiplets, and the inputs are being shared among chiplets or broadcasted. The second data flow is the batch partitioning, in which the different parts of the filter are shared among different chiplets, so it's the other way around, and the inputs are independently sent to different chiplets. And the third data flow, the idea is that the filter, as in the batch partitioning one, is shared among the different chiplets, but the input activations will be partitioned and they will be independently sent to different chiplets. So we ran some preliminary tests with these data flows in a baseline DNN accelerator, and down here in the graphs we show the throughput in the y-axis and the bandwidth in the x-axis for different layers of the ResNet50 DNN model, and for these different data flows. For instance, an interesting behavior to notice here is that, for instance, in this high-resolution layer, the activation partitioning strategy is by far the best one. This is because in high-resolution layers, the filters are quite large. So here, since as we can see in the activation partitioning, we can share the chiplets, and this is an advantage of if the fabric allows broadcasting or multicasting. So since in this kind of layers the filters are quite large, we can leverage this capability. In contrast, for instance, in a low resolution layer, in which is the activations, the ones that are very, very expensive to move because they are very large in size, by using a filter partitioning strategy, we'll be able to share all this data with all the chiplets very fast if our fabric allows for a multicasting. So here we can observe the main takeaways from these experiments. The first one is that different layers favor different partitioning strategies. So as we can see, for different layers, the top or the fastest data flow that allow us to reach saturation and throughput are different ones in different layers. And actually they saturate also at different bandwidths. So this means that the communication fabric for distribution of this data is key, and that broadcast support and high bandwidth are critical for scalability, since different data flows will require different broadcasts at different moments. So since different layers require different data flows in order to be optimum, if we were able to support an adaptive partitioning strategy in real time across the DNN model, or even in other DNN models, that would be really an advantage. So as we said, the current way of scaling out a DNN accelerator is via electrical interposers. We said that this is bandwidth limited, and this is because in the interposer, so within the chiplets, we see that the pitch wires are very, very small, but out of the chiplet, so the interface with the chiplet with the interposer, we have these micro bumps, which are small, but they are still quite larger than the pitch wires. So this limits the bandwidth in size. Moreover, when using electrical interposers, usually what is done is that the chiplets are connected only neighbor to neighbor. So this increases the latency in communications that are far away. So this latency can be hidden if this is done in the collection stage. So when we are gathering the partial outputs from the PEs to the memory, but if this happens in the distribution stage, so from the memory to the processing elements, this is in the critical path. So as an alternative, we propose to use wireless NetworkonPackage. So by means of introducing short-range wireless transceivers and antennas in the chiplets, we were able to give them wireless capabilities. In order to work with such system, we would use the package as a propagation medium, which is in itself a very controlled medium. So by using wireless technology, some advantages are that we'll have a natural broadcast capability, which can be very useful in some data flows, as we've seen. We'll have low latency, since we will not have multiple hops, and the energy dependence will be linear. This is because if a chiplet wants to participate in the communication, it only has to include a transceiver. Also, we will not be bandwidth limited as we were with the pin size. And the last point is that we will be able to have a dynamic topology. This means that at runtime, we'll be able to change the data flow, since receivers can read or not the information that arrives to its antenna. So we did a study on the current wireless NetworkonPackage. State-of-the-art transceivers can reach up to 100 gigabits per second. And here we plot the trends on area and power for different transceivers. We extrapolate such numbers based on more than 70 transceivers in literature. So here we present the Vin architecture. So basically, we'll have two levels. The first one is including the high bandwidth memory, the global SRAM, the chiplet array, and the NetworkonPackage. And then a lower level will be within chiplet architecture, in which we are agnostic of. So we are focusing on the top level. So in that top level, for the distribution stage, we will use the wireless, as we said, which will enable us to use broadcast. And this will only be from the global memory, from the SRAM to the chiplets. So the communication between, the communication from chiplet to memory, so the gathering will be via the wired interposer. This is because broadcast is very well leveraged for wireless, but since the chiplet to the SRAM communication is usually many-to-one, we will keep using the wired connections. And for our baseline architecture, we focus on using 256 chiplets and 64 processing elements per chiplet. So here's an example of how an example of data flow. In this case, the filter partitioning one would be mapped using the Vin architecture. So first of all, we would start by unicasting the filters to different chiplets, and internally, depending on the architecture of each chiplet, this will be distributed among the different Ps. So then the filter partitioning allows broadcasting the inputs, so that's what we are showing here. And then again, internally, the chiplets would distribute the data, the input data. Next, the different Ps would compute the partial outputs by means of multiplication and other computations, and then the output activation. And finally, we would reduce all these partial outputs back to the memory via the electrical interposers. So in order to estimate performance metrics, the accelerator cost model Maestro has been used, which considers different NetworkonPackage parameters such as the latency, the bandwidth, and the multicast characteristics. The DNN models that have been evaluated have been the ResNet 50 and the UNet. And we consider both conservative and aggressive design points for Vienna and for the electric baseline. Basically, the aggressive design point has a higher bandwidth than the conservative design point. So here we present some results, some throughput results of the Vin architecture for running different DNN models, different layers, and different data flows. We can see that the end-to-end throughput is improved by 2.2 to up to 5.1 times. And that based on, so if we have the same relative bandwidth, Vienna can achieve always better results than the electrical interposer, and this is due to the ability of broadcasting in a single cycle in the distribution stage. We have also included here an extra data flow, which is the adaptive one, which is enabled by the wireless interconnects. Basically, this adaptive data flow results from picking the best data flow across all the layers for a DNN model, which, as we said, is enabled by the wireless transceivers. So in energy, we observe an average reduction of 38%, and this is mainly due to the broadcasts and single hop transmissions. Moreover, we observe a drastic improvement in energy when the multicasting opportunities appear, and this is for specific data flows and DNN models. But for instance, here, filter partitioning allows us to broadcast the inputs. So in layers in which the inputs are very large, this is a very large energy reduction. And more results can be seen in the paper. So we wanted to check the overheads in order to see that they were not excessive. So maybe the one thing to consider is that the power overhead in the chiplets is 25%, due to that the chiplet power is very well reduced. But This is significant, but this is very well worthy if we consider the throughput and energy improvements that we already commented. We can also see how the area overhead in the chiplet is quite reduced, is only 16%. And in the memory side, we see that the overhead is almost unnoticeable, so it's only 1% for the power and 4% in the area. So, as a conclusion of this presentation, we've presented a new scalable design methodology for DNN accelerators based on wireless technology. Specifically, we focus on the scale-out problem, and that is to increase the number of chiplets. And since electrical interposer are bandwidth limited due to physical size of the chiplets, alternatively, we propose wireless interconnects by means of wireless NetworkonPackage technology. As we have seen, this has certain advantages, maybe being the most remarkable ones. The single hop communications, which if we had to use electrical interposers, maybe for very far away chiplets, the latency would increase a lot, and also that would consume a lot of energy. And also the broadcast capabilities, which as we have also checked, for certain data flows, it's quite an improvement. We've also found which is the best data flow for leveraging the wireless communications for different layers. And actually, we have also showed that the wireless interconnects allow for an adaptive data flow. All in all, so we consider data flow requirements and architecture capabilities, and we observed an energy reduction up to 75% in those data flows and layers, which are more wireless friendly, let's say. And we could also improve the throughput up to 5.1 times. All of this has been achieved by introducing the transceivers, which came with an overhead, but we've seen how this is reduced in comparison to the advantages that we have. We also wanted to acknowledge the Whiplash Project, which is a project funded by the European Commission, and which focuses on wireless plasticity for massive heterogeneous computer architecture. So this is all. Thank you for attending to the presentation of this paper. And please, if you have any doubts, just leave them in the Q&A. Thank you.